Welcome to the Curious Conversations Collaborative with your hosts Karen Revell and Tessa van Keeken. We hope by listening to these conversations you will gain insight, awareness, perspective, inspiration and motivation to create a career or business and life that lights you up and brings you happiness and joy.
Yeah.
Anyway, how are you? What you been up to?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm doing good. Like I'm doing my lives online and so it's kind of exciting. It's scary, but good.
It's always scary when you put yourself out there.
Yeah, it is. And and I've always like this like I think I put things a bit backward, like, you know, in the sense of like I should have done more of this first and then put all my stuff out there instead of, you know, put everything out there and then start this. But it's okay.
Well, there's lots of different paths and different ways of getting there. So
Yeah. And how are you? I saw your new website. Looks amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, still need some tweaks and stuff, but it's nice to have my online home back up.
Yes.
After a while. So yeah. Right. So today we said we'd talk about the topic or the subject of authenticity.
Yes.
And about like what is it and like why is it so hard to be ourselves?
Yes.
And how do you know when you're really being authentic?
Yes.
And I think, you know, especially today in like the online world, you know, with the rise of social media and 24-hour TV and the film industry and everything, there's a lot of glamour and a lot of expectation around people and, you know, how we should look and how we should dress and, you know, and even from like conditioning from society and our family and everything about who we are in terms of like we attach labels.
Yeah.
And the meanings of those, like, so what is a mother and what is a sister and or a husband, or, you know, what is a leader and what is a professional or an entrepreneur or whatever. And it's like these labels that we have in our minds, an idea or a picture of what that represents, and then it's kind of like we put them on like pieces of clothing and adopt those. And then I think being our true selves sometimes makes us feel like naked because we've got to like take off all of those labels, and it's like, yes. Oh my God. So I think that's why sometimes it can be scary to be truly authentic. And like I say, especially in a public place like online, or when you're out, you know, maybe in a job where you're presenting to other people or whatever, it's like it feels very vulnerable to be your true self.
Yeah, and I think for me, like the most interesting, because I was thinking about it, like, of course, we had, you know, said we would talk about this. So then what happens if you say something like that? Then suddenly you start noticing things and insights pop up or questions. And one of the things I was really, for me as well, the awareness of, like, you were talking already about it, like, you know, the different layers or labels or different roles we take on. That very often we see them nearly as separate identities. Like, yes. You know, we very often talk about, oh, my personal life and my professional life. That's the biggest separation a lot of people make.
Yes.
And as if they're two different lives. Now, again, of course, they're different elements, but like you are still in that in both situations. And I think I was thinking about that like, you know, the same that when we want to make changes in our life, very often we think, you know, a new job or a new place where we live or a new relationship or anything like that. But then very often you notice that unless you also really look at who you are in the current situation, in the current job, in the current relationship or whatever it is, that then you just bring yourself with you. Which is why we so often, you know, I think come up with the same issues even if the situation around us completely changes, because we're still there. So I think for me, authenticity is around that. So for me, it really starts as well with that really, really a deep level of self-awareness.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think a lot of people, I mean, obviously we work in the personal development arena as well, and it's like, you know, people in that who want to go on that journey, who want to start on that journey, a lot of personal development begins with that whole self-discovery and self-awareness piece. But there are a lot of people who, are kind of blind to it all and don't actually see like the different elements of them, the different parts that make up. I always remember going to listen to a coach once talk about how we all have like these different characters, like if you like, in our head or as part of our psyche, and it's like different players in an orchestra. And everyone's got their own part to play. But what we need to be is we need to be the conductor of the orchestra. We need to be able to manage these different parts of ourselves, because we make up the whole orchestra. And it's always stuck with me, because it's like sometimes we drop into one of the players in the orchestra, one of the musicians, and we're just playing that part. Whereas actually we are part, like we are all of those elements in the orchestra that make it up. So,
no, I love that one, because I also think it shows that, for me, again, the real true authenticity is like, in a way, there is some sort of, if we talk about being our true self, it's not a static entity. It's not like once you find who you truly are, or whatever you want to call it, that then it's like, now I know how I am. That's it. I don't need to do anything anymore, because it's still evolving. So I think I like this analogy, because it is really showing this idea of, you will still, first of all, the fact that you might still be slightly different in certain areas of your life, that, you know, you might not be, the way you express who you truly are might be different with your partner than with your boss.
Absolutely.
Yet the core is the same. So for me, it's like that element where, but even then your core, like as how you feel or how you are, that evolves over time. So being true to your are is always, it's like a flow, and it's in each moment again. It's like, for me, it's about that, you know, that what is really important to, or how you're feeling, is aligned with how you're expressing yourself.
Absolutely.
And in that, you still have choices, in the sense that you might still choose to, even if you're feeling very sad, for instance, in this moment in time, you might still choose not to show that completely when you're, I don't know, commuting on the train. And that's not being not authentic. That's just, you know, it's just, well, it's a different situation, but you're aware of that, you're doing that rather. And I think this is where people generally, what you earlier said, that people don't realize, is that you think that you're acting a certain way, you're expressing yourself a certain way because of what the others do.
Yes. And and it's like, it's almost like to be accepted. I mean, to be accepted is a primary instinct of man. It's like, you know, we are, you know, if we go back to you know, our primal days are like, we were part of tribes. And actually, if you're not accepted by the tribe, you're going to die, because you're going to be outcast. And we still have that instinct within us that we want to be accepted. So when, you know, when we go into a group, unless we're really strong and connected to ourselves, we often want to try and fit in. Even though that group might not be the right group for us to be trying to fit in to. So I think, being aware of when you're acting in a certain way to try and fit into the environment or the people around you, versus just you know, when, like, I'm thinking about when you know, when you're with a group of friends that you're like, they're really a close group of friends, you are just yourself. You can go there, you can have a laugh, you can say what you want, and you just generally be yourself. Whereas we put ourselves into what we call more formal situations, and all of a sudden we've got to be, oh, it's like we put on this almost like a veneer to polish ourselves up, to present ourselves out into the world. It's like, oh, they can't see the real me. Whereas actually it's the real you that your friends and family know and like. And we're just so scared of not being liked or being accepted that we put on this show, and then actually that makes us inauthentic. It doesn't make us the real person that we are.
Yeah, and I think also what's another element of that, though, because very often what you see happening is that I think people in their attempt, and I have done this, I mean, like I still do it sometimes, you know, because again, we have all these fears. So again, it's that self-awareness of knowing that there are situations where you feel scared to show yourself. So for instance, if you take the example of crying on the train, if I do it because I prefer to do it with people I'm close with, that's one thing. If I do it because I am worried about what others might think of me when I'm crying, see, and that's the difference. So it's like, again, this being authentic, you can only check in with yourself, whether expressing yourself in a certain way is inauthentic because you're doing it about all your thoughts or worries about what others might think, or wanting to be accepted, or whatever it is, or that you're doing it because you make the choice that you say, well, actually, I feel more comfortable this way. And I think, again, because people think it's the outcome, they're judging the outcome of how somebody acts as being authentic or not, where it's really the intention or the drive behind it, your inner drive, that's what makes it authentic or not.
Yeah.
Yet also, and I think that was one thing that I really thought about, is like what sometimes happens when we don't really feel, as you said, connected to really who we are, but also really confident enough, if you like, to be vulnerable and to really show ourselves. That what happens sometimes is that we go from this space where we kind of hide ourselves and do everything we can to be accepted, and then because we want to be authentic, we want to be ourselves, we skip one step and go into this, here I am, this is who I am, take it or leave it. Which seems authentic because it's, hey, you're doing what you want, right? Like, I mean, if you want to cry, you cry. If you want to laugh, you laugh. Don't care what others think. But to me, that's just the other side of not really being authentic, because what you're missing in that element is the vulnerability, the ability to actually show yourself in connection to those around you, to really be connected. And for me, I can't separate them, because I think...
So are you saying it's how you relate to someone else?
Yeah, and it was just the other day that like we were in this, like it's a small venue where we sometimes meet up with a group of women to talk about entrepreneurial and personal development things. But the place we were doing it is called the Mandela House, because the person who built that up, like, there's a link with South Africa and with but also very much with the philosophy of Mandela. But one of the things is from the is the Ubuntu. You see that a lot online and stuff, but Ubuntu really means I exist because of the other. And I think this is another element of, for me, that authenticity, like, you cannot exist without a connection with others or the universe, if you like, because, you know, no one is in existence in complete isolation.
Yeah, so in a way that it's almost like you don't like another person is almost like the mirror for you to see yourself, because you don't, on your own, with no one else out there, you don't I'm not going to say you don't matter, but it's like you
No.
don't exist in some ways, because how you present yourself, it doesn't matter if no one can see. So it's
No.
like,
Yeah, that too. But also, I think from the element that, like, even you existing is because your parents at some point came together.
yeah,
That's another discussion. But like, you know
yeah,
what I mean? Like, even your actual physical, purely your existence as a human being, there's others involved in that. And if either your parents or someone else didn't take care of you when you were a baby, and you couldn't take care of yourself, you wouldn't exist. And even later on, like I mean, there's a few people who live in complete isolation, maybe off their own land and stuff, but that's very, very few. Like in general, we have all these interactions and connections with people without which we would actually literally not survive. Like personally, if I didn't have supermarkets or farms or something around me where I could buy food, I don't think I would last a week, because I'm not able to do that myself.
yeah,
So it's a very simple way of thinking of it, but I think we forget sometimes how much we are connected to everything around us. And for me, what means that is that true authenticity is also having that awareness that, yes, I have, like, this is who I am, this is my authentic self, my true self. But the more secure I feel about that, the less worries and insecurities I have around needing to be liked, wanting approval, the easier it actually is for me to be authentic, yet to be different with each person. Not different because I'm adapting to, like, oh, I better say it this way because Karen, otherwise, Karen is that way, and otherwise she might think this. And oh, no, it's because you are also a person and you are different than maybe my partner. So the way I interact with you is different than with my partner. Yet, as long as I'm in that space where I'm really aligned and connected to who I am, I did not, like, my core did not change. But of course the relationship changed because you're
yeah,
different than my partner. You're not the same person. So it can't be the same. So I think to truly be authentic, to really be authentic, it's actually normal that you are slightly different depending on your interaction with different
yeah.
people.
I get that, and I guess that would bring me back to that whole interpretation of it being like an orchestra. And it's like what you're saying is,
Yeah.
like, with me, you're I don't know, playing the clarinet, but with your partner, you're playing, I don't know, the
The
trombone or
drum, whatever, yeah.
yeah, the harp, and it's like that's all part of you. But
Yeah.
yes, that interaction means at that point, the music you're playing is like one instrument versus or a few combined, rather than the whole thing. It doesn't have to be the whole orchestra in every
No,
interaction,
exactly.
in every
Yeah.
every piece of music or communication you put out. So
Yeah. And this comes back to, again, why it's so important to really have that self-awareness, to be aware of, like, your whole orchestra, to be that
yeah,
conductor and know your whole orchestra, so that you can also in certain situations maybe even consciously choose which one
yes,
to
yeah,
be. And but to always have that connection with the whole orchestra, or with the conductor, if you like, to really be wise around, because I can say today, like, I'm really enthusiastic and I want to talk and I want to be busy, and you come on the call and you say, look, I've such a headache, but I do want to have a chat. And I go, well, I'm going to be myself, so I'm just going to be very busy. And you go like, oh my God, I can't handle this.
yes.
So there's also this element of, there's part of it you yourself, and there's in connection with the different people. But within that, authenticity doesn't mean you can't take in consideration what the other person needs. If I really prefer to wear hippie clothes, but my father really likes kind of more chic, stylish, just normal, traditional type of, going out clothes when you go for dinner, then I can say, when he has a birthday dinner, well, I'm going to be authentic and I'm just going to wear the clothes I like, which, in a way is fine. But if it's his birthday and I know it means a lot to him, it's not being inauthentic to me to put on the clothes that he likes if it's a conscious choice for me. I'm not doing it to be liked by him. I'm not doing it like, oh, I better wear this, otherwise he's going to give out to me, or, oh, what will he think? No, I'm doing it out of kindness because I know that he likes it and it's his birthday, so why not?
Yeah.
You know, but it's a very different intention. And this is also why, besides the self-awareness, for me, the other thing, and that's often the hardest, and I still struggle with that too, is the really, really being 100% honest to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't like to admit to ourselves that we're doing something out of fear or out of worry, you know, so we like to think of us like, no, I'm being authentic here. No, it's not. No, I wasn't worrying about what he thought. I just really thought it would be better for me too. You know, we're starting justifying to ourselves why we're doing something, because, you know, it takes courage to say to yourself, well, actually, I took this action out of fear, and yeah, well, next time I'm going to try to be more authentic, but this time actually I wasn't being authentic because I didn't do it for me. I didn't actually do it for the other person. I just did it out of fear of not being approved of.
Yeah. And I think that's where, coming back to this whole piece around self-awareness and understanding our own sort of needs and motivators and our values and things that all our drivers, you know, that make us take the actions that we do, have the thoughts that we think, and understanding that and accepting that and owning it as part of ourselves and being happy with that. And just, you know, so like some of the work I do is helping people understand who they are in relation to their business. And the most common reaction I get is like, oh, this is giving me permission to be me. Because we just feel like we have to put on this like I say, veneer out to the world, and it doesn't have to be like that. It's okay to do it your way and to be yourself.
And again, and I think with business in particular, it's still find that way of being authentic to yourself, and at the same time, if you want your clients or your ideal clients to resonate with what you're doing, you need to use a little bit of their language too. And this is again that it's such a fine line. So that's why I think like services like yourselves are so beneficial, because you can help people to really first get in contact what it is that really feels right for them, rather than just maybe copying, you know, stuff that they've seen. You should say it this way, you should say it that way. Oh, I think I should. That you really go back to what you really want to, and then from that space to say, okay, but if you use those words, someone else might not understand. So can you find words that your clients would use, but that you still feel good with, that still kind of describe really what you meant, with what feels true to you. And I think, and that's that, again, that thing where, and I'm still working on that too, you know, that it's like, let me just give you a brief example. In the past, I did also a lot of meditation work and mindfulness, and I taught meditation classes, weekly meditation classes. And the people coming to those classes were very much, you know, open to really deep meditation, to looking at themselves, also working with energy. So I would talk about like breathing in energy. I would talk about being one with the universe. But, you know, the core was around being grounded within yourself and connecting from that space and being really mindful and present in your daily life. At some point, I was involved with a business group from Dutch Irish businesses in Ireland when I lived there. And on our board was also the CEO of Philips Healthcare for UK and Ireland. So at some point he said, can you come into our AGM and do half an hour meditation with our managers who have a 2 or 3 day AGM meeting in fancy hotel somewhere just outside Dublin. This was cool. So I did that, but then I had to realize if I would talk to these people, like when I asked at the start, like who had meditated of the 30 managers, like I think one person put their hand up. So starting to talk about breathing and energy, becoming one with the universe would have, you know, I would have lost them within the first minute. So I had to adapt. But it's still that message. Like my message is helping people to really be present, to, again, be reconnecting to who they are, being present and connected. And so I talked a little bit about how mindfulness is used in Silicon Valley and blah, blah, blah. And then I just really talked about breathing. I just said about breathing into your belly and allow your mind to follow that breath so that you get out of your head and more present here. And I talked about how if you're in work and think about your next holiday, that's nice, but then when you're on holiday you think about work, then it's a problem. So about this idea that mindfulness was about being in the place you are and doing what you're doing in that moment, and that really resonated with them. But in a way, but my core message was no different.
Yeah.
And I think, and that is also kind of the work that you help people with, if I'm right, that you help people to see that, you know, so you align your inner drive, is what you're putting out there, but that you might sometimes have to use different words than you might come up with yourself.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that is so great, Tessa, that you know, you're going into the corporate space with those senior leaders. It reminded me when I was back in corporate, and actually early on in my corporate career, where someone I was working with, funnily, he came from Ireland, and I mean, he was only in his 20s, and what we didn't know for a number of weeks, his younger brother had had an accident and was in a coma, and he was flying back each weekend, and then subsequently, unfortunately, his brother died, and so he was off for a few weeks and all of that. And I remember when he came back into work, and I actually followed him into the building on his first day and went up and, you know, said, I'm sorry to hear about it and that. And he said, oh, I'm dreading this. And I said, like, you know, it's okay. People, you know, just be fine and whatever. But then over the next day or two, obviously, some people wouldn't say anything first of all, some people would. But I noticed that our manager, our overall sort of senior manager, never said anything to him, not at all. And someone actually called him out on that and said, like, you know, because he just went straight up to him, oh, this is work, this is what you've been doing, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And he said after, well, you know, that's unprofessional. It's like, that's you know, you come to work to do work. And you kind of go like, but, you know, his brother's just died. How can you separate that from, like, you know, you can't have that division of work and life when something like that's going on. And it's like, you know, I think there is this whole thing about, like I say, it's you've got to present yourself, and it's like this, you've got to, you know, to him, professionalism was you're not allowed to have any emotion. And it's like, well, hold up, you know. You can't switch off a part of you and who you are, you know, just because you're going to work. At the same time, you can't like allow that to take over your life and not carry on with your life.
I mean, you don't have to share everything. Like, you know, you don't have to all the time share what you ate last night or what you did or everything private. I don't know, other things. Like, you know, there is like an element of that. You don't have to bring all your personal stuff. And even with this, it's not even around that you have to even be able to talk about everything around a loss like that. But it's about, you can't leave it all back at home, in a sense, like it's part of your being. So it's like, of course, like, I mean, there is no way, either way, by the way, that you're whatever you experience, and I don't actually want to say in your personal life or your business life, it's your life. It's experiencing these things in your life, whatever you're doing. So those experiences are going to bring, but it's like, again, you for yourself know certain things you can, sometimes you experience this in this moment with this person and then you can leave it there, and sometimes things come with you, and something like this, like when you lose someone like that, and if that's, you know, particularly when you've been close to the person or anything, then you cannot not let that influence you. And I think maybe we could talk about another time again as well, specifically around this, like allowing you know, vulnerability and things like that into your business, and how you deal with that, and how you deal with not compartmentalizing, and at the same time not being overwhelmed by what might be more personal or emotional experiences, and how you deal with, particularly when you're an entrepreneur and have your own business, where that boundary between business and yourself in a way is already way less, and that it's particular for people, of course, like I know this for myself, when you're working with people and their problems and their issues, that sometimes these things might be much more intertwined. And how you can also, this could be another topic we could talk about, around self-care, around how you can look after yourself so that you get what you need, and therefore don't get overwhelmed when you're doing your work.
Yeah. And what it's bringing up for me is also, I think, for those in business these days, I mean, because you have to market yourself, and it actually, it's not even if you're working for yourself and got your own business. I think in the corporate world, you know, there's no jobs for life anymore, so you've got to be marketing yourself and connecting. So the whole concept of, on the one hand, personal branding, so I think that's really important and that's a topic we can talk about. And then on the other side, there's this whole, you mentioned it before, and this whole comparisonitis, as I call it, but it's like, you know, comparing yourselves to someone else, and normally taking the worst of you and the best of them, and doing the comparison, and you'll always come worse off and beat yourself up. So yeah, I think there's some topics that we can talk about.
I think that would be great to go a little bit deeper into that. And I think in particular, as I said, with the self-care, I think, you know, we all have also our needs. And I remember this even from working in social work, where when we were doing our practical year, that a fellow student, a colleague of mine, like, she had just lost her mother, and she did an intake with a person, and their main issue they wanted to talk about was the loss of their mother. So she said, I have to refer you. This is not the moment for me to deal with that. And I thought that was so strong of her, not trying to struggle through, not trying to, because she would do herself a disservice, but also the other person, and to actually know, like, no, this is too much. So that there are times where, like, yes, in general, you have to be professional, and your personal life, whatever happens, you still have to help people with what they're doing. But there are also times where you have to be strong and say, and it's vulnerability again as well, to then actually say, and authentic, very authentic, to then say, right now, I cannot do this. This is, you know, not good for me, not good for you. I need to actually not go there. And I think one thing I want to say about the comparisonitis that you said there as well, being authentic, again, we already talked about that it's also in connection to others. And even though it's a true self, it's still also flexible. I grow, like, I'm not 100% the same person I was 10 or 15 years ago, or even a year ago. So comparisonitis, when it is what you said, taking your worst self, comparing it to the best of someone else, that's very detrimental. But in your interaction with other people, whether it's learning about how you come across and think, whoa, I didn't realize that, so maybe I will actually change something about how I speak or how I behave, because that doesn't actually resonate or align with who I actually feel I am. But also that sometimes you see people do something a certain way and think, whoa, that's a nice way of being. Maybe you see how someone always smiles as the bus driver when they get on the bus, and it might sound then inauthentic if you're starting to do it, but if you've never even thought about the fact of acknowledging the bus driver when you get on the bus, but you see someone else do it, and therefore that makes you aware of it, and then you start doing it, then it's not inauthentic, then it's just something you've learned from seeing someone else doing something. And this is maybe a very silly example, but I'm sure you get what I mean. And for bigger things that can happen too. So I think, again, it comes back to that. But you also have to be, again, then aligned and strong enough within yourself to recognize, to also be able to take feedback or receive feedback, and also learn from other people, and actually making that your own if you think, hey, that very much fits into who I am, and that's actually something I really would love to be doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow, it is very interesting. I'm sure we could talk for another hour, but I think that it would be way too long to be, if anyone is actually want to watch this, then it would be way too long. So I don't know, is there anything else that you think we really, really need to say about this?
No, I think we've started touching on quite a few other areas. So let's make some notes, and we'll come back and talk about those in the future.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, again, if anyone is watching this or is watching this as a replay or a recording, if this brings up anything for you that you want to share with us, or if you have any questions, or if it brings up things around other topics that you think, oh, please do talk about that sometimes, because we would love to hear about that, do let us know. And I'm sure we'll get back to that in the future.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
Right. It was great talking to you again.
And likewise.
I'm looking forward to our next conversation.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
All right. We'll see you soon. Bye.
See you soon. Bye. Bye. Bye.